Imagine being the child of someone very powerful in politics, but at the same time being mistreated by them. Your only way out is to make money by completing a game. But when you finally succeed, you are transmigrated into it. Now you must decide. Continue being controlled by the most powerful, or side with the monsters and build your own kingdom. The story begins with the protagonist thinking about how it would be to win 10 billion wons. In front of his computer, he reflects that if he could do it, he would escape from there. The young man is known for being the son of a famous congressman. However, the boy has to do everything to live up to his father's fame. He always appears in the news alongside him. At school, a female student hugs the protagonist, making him uncomfortable. The girl whispers that they should get away from there for a bit. In the background, other students comment on their envy for not being able to get close to the girl. The young girl takes him to an alley, and there, along with some older boys, she questions why the protagonist doesn't lend her more money. Frightened, Jae-han says he already lent her some last week and can't do it again. However, one of the boys threatens him, saying that he would have to report him for creating an illegal website. Cornered, the protagonist says that they are also accomplices. Mockingly, the girl asserts that then they would all have to turn themselves in. She says this because she knows that, in the end, Jae-han would be the one to suffer the consequences, with several headlines emerging and putting his father's integrity at stake. Then once again, she approaches, telling the boy that she knows he will find a way. Later she leaves. She is so angry that she even slams the door, but she didn't expect her father to be there as well. The man approaches as if he already knows what his son has done. With an intimidating expression, he tells the protagonist not to do anything that would tarnish his name. Jae-han is very scared and starts to sweat cold. Without a response, the congressman asks why he is silent. Trying to act quickly, the boy smiles, saying he won't disappoint him. In response, his father says there's nothing he could do that would disappoint him more, and he orders the poor boy to continue doing only what he commands. Frustrated, the protagonist runs to his room. He wonders why he has to go through all of this. At that moment, a kitten approaches, licking his hand. The boy gets startled and pulls his hand away. On his desk, the kitten lets out a meow. Jae-han feels happy to realize that his kitten cares about him. Then the feline jumps into his lap, tickling the boy. Holding the kitten, the young man says that Ruru is the only one still by his side. Suddenly, he notices a notification from a game on his computer. He sees that he has already cleared 99 rounds of the game and only has one more to finish. However, he can't get past the 100th round no matter what. He always gets a game over. Not understanding, he wonders why he can't succeed, even after trying everything. Another player in a live stream also complains angrily about not being able to get through. Meanwhile, the protagonist watches. He remembers that this game was released a year ago, but no one can get past the 100th wave. Even so, he wouldn't give up trying. He knows that his only chance to escape this hellish life is by completing the game. He had one last hope, which was to use the heart card of Rizaldrake, but even then, he can't get past the level. Near him, there is a bag with grocery items, and inside, there is a cat treat. Trying to reach the treat, the kitten accidentally steps on the phone. Jae-han is surprised to see the screen turn red upon selecting disassembly, and he can't believe that what he disassembled was the heart of Rizaldrake. For a while, he stays there trying to process what happened. This is because now he would have to start from scratch to get the item again. However, he begins to panic at the thought of it. Suddenly, a new notification alerts him about a fragment of the heart. He doesn't understand, as this usually doesn't happen when disassembling an item. But if he's right, he could do something. Thus, he accepts the fragment using the soul of the dragon, and when a red light shines, he realizes that this was the way to complete the game, restarting using this new item. The next day, he goes to school as usual, but he takes the opportunity to play secretly in the middle of a book. When he gets home, he continues playing, and even while walking, he does this. It doesn't take long for him to clear the 99th level. Now with the heart fragment, he would be able to complete it. The young man is determined to succeed this time, and so he clicks to start the level. There he uses a female knight to defeat the monsters. So he clicks on it, praying for it to work, and a lightning bolt strikes all creatures. It seems that now, finally, the protagonist will succeed, and as expected, he achieves victory. Very excited, Jae-han almost jumps for joy, but suddenly, his father opens the bedroom door with a golf club. Startled, our hero stands up, as it didn't seem like a good thing. The old man says he received a call from schoolmates who blackmailed him, threatening to leak Jae-han's illegal mistake if he didn't pay what they asked. Our hero, terrified, tries to explain himself and apologizes, but the deputy was already ready to hit him with that club. The man had a very malevolent look, while the protagonist just screamed in fear. Jae-han cried, unable to do anything. His father uses that tool to destroy Jae-han's cell phone. After this nightmare ends, Jae-han gets up and asks if his father has seen his cat Ruru, but the only answer he receives is that he wouldn't need the animal anymore. This makes the protagonist's anger rise. Facing him, his father questions why he is making that face, and sweating with rage, Jae-han asks where his cat is. Without showing any emotion, the man says she will be with the boy's mother, who has already lost her life. The shock is so great that he can't even say anything. Holding Jae-han's head, the deputy says the boy just has to follow his orders. And finally, he tells him not to disappoint him anymore. He also claims that he believed the boy could do this. While still lying on the floor, the cell phone alerts him that he has completed the mission. But now Jae-han no longer sees any meaning in continuing his life. The device continues speaking and now says it invites him to its world. A lightning bolt from the sky appears in his room, and from there, he is taken to the castle of the Game Kingdom. As soon as he appears in the middle of the palace, people were already waiting. They call him the legendary knight, and the people around shout that he will be the savior. Trying to understand, Jahan comments that his tears no longer flow. He feels as if his emotions have been reset. In front of him is a bearded old man. It is the king, and he asks if the young man is indeed the legendary knight. Soon, our hero manages to recognize the man's face, and he remembers the game, including the dialogues, which were also the same. Then, the bearded man introduces himself as King Baelish Jordia III. He explains that this kingdom is being invaded by monsters. At that moment, he is interrupted by a servant who brings news about the invasion. Meanwhile, the protagonist just observes without saying anything. He continues to absorb all the scenes, and everything matches exactly with the game he was trying to complete. Returning to speak, the king says the situation is urgent and orders Jihan to find a quick solution. He asks the young man to become the commander of the knights to protect the kingdom. Standing up, Jehan asks everyone to listen carefully to what he is about to say. The boy is still very shaken, and remembering moments with his cat, he says that winning 1,000,000,000 wands was worth nothing anymore. The people do not understand and even say he seems weak for a knight. In response, the king says that if he can fulfill his assignment, he would grant the boy whatever he desired. This catches our hero's attention. He asks if it could really be anything, and the bearded man says he doesn't need to worry. He just has to do what he orders. This statement makes him remember that Dan Guy, who is his father. The man always forced him to follow orders to maintain his image, and now the king was doing the same thing. Therefore, Jehan immediately shouts that he will not do any of that. Upon hearing this, the king does not like it and becomes doubtful. In front of everyone present, our hero explains his life situation. He has always been surrounded by selfish people. Everyone, including his own father, tried to use him for their own benefit, and now the same thing was happening. This king just wanted to have another slave, and he would not accept that anymore. The king does not say a word, but clearly does not like it. While sending everyone to hell, he clicks on the option to reject the offer. The king's servant cannot believe what he has just witnessed. Meanwhile, that notification starts to turn red. In the game's story, after a certain time, the monsters attack the kingdom, and thus the player fails to protect the kingdom from the monsters. He thought this was the end, but it seems he has now gained a new chance to choose what he wants. The window shows that the monster faction has been unlocked for him. Standing still, looking at it, Jehan reflects on what this means. Could he be the chosen one to invade the kingdom? The king then says that choices come with responsibility. Asking everyone to listen, he states that the boy is no longer a legendary knight, and shouting, he declares that Jehan is now an enemy of the kingdom, putting everyone in danger. Meanwhile, our hero contemplates that possibility, but he must act quickly, as the king has ordered his elimination. Even in this situation, the protagonist remains calm. He stands still while the knights surround him, and soon swords are drawn close to his neck, but he knows he will find a way out of this. With that, a great red light emerges from his direction. The king, with an angry look, is left confused. Jehan's selection is complete, and with it, he has gained several superhuman abilities. Thus, his ultimate goal becomes to eliminate all humans. This time, he will fight on the side of monsters, destroying the kingdom. The system warns that if he succeeds in his mission, he will earn one of the items that exist there, and then be able to return to his original world. This reminds him of the time when his mother brought the kitten to him, and he wonders if he could return to that time. Returning to his current situation, the soldiers comment on the strange energy. The king is sure he saw the shape of a monster. That creature was unlike anything he had ever seen. Jehan analyzed his new situation, as this was not part of the original game. Soon, the main mission appears, stating that he must break the defense and attack the humans. Despite his missions being different, our hero realizes he is still progressing as in the game, and if he were to follow the same order, a random summoning ticket should appear. But what appears in front of him is an egg. The system states that it is a random egg, and Jehan decides to hatch it. With that, another great explosion occurs. The monster's wings appear amidst the dust. The soldiers realize that something has been summoned. Upon seeing which monster it was, the protagonist is surprised. Right from the start, he manages to summon the dragon Rizaldrak. Meanwhile, the creature begins to show itself. However, when it fully appears, it is just a baby dragon. Jehan notices that Rizaldrak has come at level 1. Moreover, the little creature is quite cute and even licks his hand. This gesture makes our hero remember his kitten, and another ability is granted to him, the Eye of the Supreme. This ability allows him to see the statistics of monsters and items. As soon as the knights see the little monster, they feel more relieved. Therefore, they decide it is the right time to attack. Our hero still does not know if this is something real, but he wouldn't mind. He uses his Eye of the Supreme to see the little dragon's abilities. With that, he discovers that it can unleash a dragon's breath. Soon after, he asks his little friend to unleash its power. The soldiers are already ready to strike him. For a few seconds, Jehan thinks he won't have enough time, but what seemed to be just a small fireball turns into a massive explosion, so large that it eliminates everyone in front of it. It even pierces through the palace, and causes debris to fall on the village. Facing that large hole made in the wall, our hero is impressed by the strength of the little dragon. The people present also cannot believe that was done with a single blow. They wonder what exactly that creature Jehan summoned was. Excited, our hero acknowledges that it was much more than he imagined, and if everything continued as it was, in the end, he would obtain one of the knight's defense items. He was in no hurry to return to his terrible life, so he would give his all to complete his mission in this world. Then he draws the king's attention, and looking directly at the man, he says he will bring about the destruction of humans. He is very determined to achieve his ultimate reward. With all the noise noise coming from the palace, one of the characters wonders what was happening there, and nearby, a knight was running as fast as he could, thinking he could end everything there. The protagonist asks the dragon to take another shot. Immediately, the king's servant asks to protect the majesty. Thus, they form a shield with their armor right in front. Jihan points to the target while the little creature charges its power. The intent is for the king to be destroyed immediately. Meanwhile, the delayed knight is almost there. The other soldiers continue doing their part with the barrier, and our hero just waits for the dragon to finish charging its fire. When he finally unleashes the power, the knight arrives. The man is happy to know that the king is still safe, and those around him feel relieved as there was no explosion. Looking at his new friend, Jehan realizes that something went wrong. It seems that even the dragon's breath needed enough mana to be generated. That's why, when the creature went to attack, only a small jet of fire came out. So little that when it hit the ground, it only released a puff of black smoke. The protagonist decides that now the best course of action is to wait for the cooldown time. But that knight approaches. In the meantime, our hero just observes, trying to recognize him. The knights are divided into several ranks, and this one who arrived is an elite knight, rank S of the Zodiac. The strong, muscular man is known as Ares. The other soldiers report that everything is fine with the king, and at that moment, the protagonist realizes that things were getting bad. From afar, the king orders them to eliminate the enemy immediately. Thus, the knight activates his power staff. Along with his dragon, Jehan wonders what he should do now. This is because he knows that this knight has a very strong ability. Without wasting much time, the knight activates his wall of flames, heading directly towards the protagonist. He knows that this time there will be no escape, and the explosion hits the area, knocking down more parts of the palace. Even the other knights who were in the way ended up being hit by the flames, but at least our hero managed to dodge. He remembers that in the game, this wall of flames only hits in a straight line, so it was easy to dodge by throwing himself to the side. However, he realizes that he doesn't even care about people from his own kingdom. Nervous, the man complains about that dodge, and says that this time he will make a fiery hole in his heart. The protagonist knows that this barrier takes time to recover again, so he decides that this is the right time to escape from there. When he looks up, the knight is already very close, and he thinks about what he could do at that moment. He reflects that he couldn't have come this far to end like this. Another reward is given to him, with a mysterious chest. Without wasting any time, Jehan accepts the item. He even lets out a shout, saying to hurry up, as he didn't have time. When the knight finally goes to strike him, he ends up hitting that chest. With that, he is repelled, and finally, the protagonist manages to see what is inside. A large sword begins to emerge. To know exactly what it was, he uses the Supreme Eye. The sword has magical attack power and also enhances attributes. He is also impressed, as this item is rank S. He recognizes that perhaps they really want him to destroy the human faction. But when this weapon touches the ground, the area begins to crack. Jehan can hardly believe what is about to happen. The entire ground starts to crumble into pieces, and he ends up being thrown out. The place was high, so he falls from the top. He wonders if the royal palace can't even bear the weight of a weapon. Despite this, it seemed to be his end as he was nearing the ground. And at that moment, his clothes get pulled. With that, he realizes that he is no longer falling. He was indeed keeping his distance from the ground. When he notices, he sees that his little dragon is making a great effort to carry him. The people of the kingdom are impressed by someone flying. Confused, Jehan wonders why he would start in enemy territory. But at least he knows that, in that place, the only one who can cause trouble is Ares. Even so, he would have to be careful, as rank S knights will increase. However, his priority would first be to escape from there. In the meantime, the knight points his own weapon at his neck. The man thinks he is pathetic for not being able to finish off the enemy, and even says that he should have already been swept away by the sea. At that moment, someone announces that the king is calling. So he bows before him and asks for an appropriate punishment for letting the criminal escape. The king orders him to stop and reminds him that the sun is already setting. With that, Ares remembers that the monsters become stronger at this time. Thus, the Majesty names him commander and sends him to the walls. Meanwhile, Jehan remains in the air. He remembers the tactics and mistakes he had in the game. The first attack he faced was from wild goblins, but with Knight Ares around, it will be somewhat difficult for the monsters to succeed at first. At that moment, he realizes that his body is getting closer to the ground. The little dragon can no longer hold on, but they are still in the kingdom. Despite the great effort, Risedrak can't take it anymore and ends up falling drastically. With that, they crash into a stone column that was there. Even with the collision, Jehan is not hurt. Right next to him, he sees a pair of boots. Without thinking twice, he puts them on. But to his surprise, someone appears saying that they do not know him. She is the young blonde-haired girl, Lib. She is also a rank S knight. Immediately, she asks the young man to identify himself. Jehan remembers that the girl was key to stopping the 100th wave in the game. Despite being a bit forgetful, she was good at farming dungeons. So in the game, she managed to get strong enough to defeat monsters. Once again, the girl asks him to identify himself. Jehan calls her by name, leaving Lib confused and asking if he knows her. In response, the protagonist says he knows her very well and has been able to assess her value accurately. As expected, the girl doesn't understand anything. However, Jehan is focused on taking her down as well, now that she has also become an enemy. As night falls, the goblins are already ready to invade the kingdom. The soldiers lie in wait and warn others that the monsters are approaching. They were indeed very close, ready to attack. With that, the soldiers are instructed to shoot their arrows. Some were already scaling the walls, so they start throwing stones. Everything was a mess and a cacophony. One of the knights says that if they continue at this pace, they won't last long. Thus, one of them mentions that Dries is already on his way to help. In another part of the kingdom, Liv's questioning continues. She said that if the boy didn't respond, she would make her own decision. Our hero thinks he wants to eliminate her right now, but that would be impossible. So for now, he would have to disguise himself. Thus, he responds to her that he is an ordinary citizen from District 1 and just wanted to help in the war. The little dragon also appears, and this makes the girl anxious because it is a monster. Jihan starts to sweat nervously, as his friend was not supposed to show up now. Seeing the girl's suspicious expression, he would have to come up with a good excuse. However, to his relief, Liv steps back. She points her sword at the creature and says she will protect Jihan from the monster. Not understanding anything, Rizrek makes a very cute expression. The knight continues to look on with a serious gaze. However, the little dragon maintains its gentle demeanor. With that, the girl realizes that the little monster did not want to attack. Another explosion occurs nearby. This catches her attention, and Jihan takes the opportunity to warn his little friend and flee from there. It wasn't the soldiers' fault, who mishandled their weapons, and when Lid turns her attention back to the protagonist, he and his monster have already escaped. At that moment, a soldier approaches the young woman, warning her about the gate. The girl becomes anxious, as it was something dangerous. The blows were hitting hard there. Several soldiers were already waiting inside, very scared. The gate began to crack. However, Liv arrives and asks everyone to prepare for close combat. The archers also aimed their bows at the goblins, but one among them was gigantic, and with its help, they would soon be able to destroy that gate. As expected, the giant uses its weapon and shatters the entrance. Thus, the knight grips her sword and asks everyone to prepare to attack. That giant goblin takes the lead and begins to enter. With that, the kingdom's soldiers prepare to advance. But Reese is also arriving at the location to help. Even the girl is surprised to see him. The young man realizes that the gate has been breached, and without much delay, he unleashes his flame power. Thus, all those goblins are burned. With a superior expression, he says that these monsters still have a lot to improve. From atop a mountain, Jehan watches the fight. He knows he is in a very different situation now, for his goal is not to save humans, but to destroy them. The little dragon observes him, and ends up getting a pet on its head. Something catches the little monster's attention. It was raindrops. Wanting to play, Jehan holds it back to prevent it from causing trouble. Returning to the kingdom, the humans end up winning. She feels a bit awkward, as after all, it wasn't her who took down the enemies. In the forest where the protagonist is, someone approaches. Jihan remembers that he started far away in the kingdom, but now he was in the middle of the forest with the monster faction. This would be a bit difficult, as he had no idea what to do in this position. He had restarted the game hundreds of times, so he knew all the tactics. But now he would have to start everything from scratch. At that moment, he remembers something important. Looking to the side, his little friend is right there. But soon Riseldrake flies to the opposite side. He is surprised to see what it was about. On the ground, there were several ants working. One of them gets scared upon realizing they are being watched. The little dragon was very close, observing everything. Setting his little friend aside, Jehan begins to think about what to do. And to his surprise, a mission suddenly appears. He would have to establish a faction of monsters. Thus, he thinks about how he would do that. If he had to recruit monsters like goblins, this would be the moment. But there were none around, and he wonders how he would speak to each one. At that moment, something strange approaches. When our hero realizes it, it is already too close. Someone is trying to attack him to take his life. The weapon is already very close to our protagonist's neck, and the person is right there, standing in front of him. Opening his eyes, Jihan does not understand what is happening. The claws are brushing against his skin, and when he looks closer at who it is, he recognizes her immediately. The young girl is a beastkin, a monster with characteristics of some animal. Jihan calls her a rabbit, as that is what comes to his mind when he looks at her. But the girl does not seem to like that very much. She argues, saying that she looks more like a fox, and even trying to explain herself. The young girl does not accept it and continues to argue. Keeping calm, our protagonist observes her, and finally he manages to recognize her as an Arctic fox. The young girl approaches to sniff him, and thus she begins to smell all over Jihan's body. The girl says that, although he looks human, his scent is that of a monster. This even leaves our hero a bit shocked, and soon after, a new notification shows that 2 abilities have been activated. The first was that he would be able to communicate with others, and the second was being attractive, as he had a positive attraction from others. With this, Jehan understands why he is able to talk to the girl, but she still does not seem completely comfortable, and she starts asking questions about who he is. Confused, he wonders if the attraction ability should not be taking effect. At that moment, a rope passes right in front of his face, that ends up hitting someone and injuring them. 3 men approach, celebrating that they have gotten what they wanted. Looking at them, Jehan realizes that he has been out of the kingdom for a year. With a lot of anger, the wolf girl says that she suspected the protagonist was human. She said she did not fall for the trap and thought Jehan was behind it. In pain, she questions why they keep chasing her. Jehan realizes that there is a misunderstanding happening. Meanwhile, the humans pull the rope. The girl ends up flying through the air with that arrow in her leg. The big guy in the group uses all his strength to pull. The young girl takes the opportunity to try try to attack him. Our hero just watches, seeing what will happen. The poor fox ends up taking a punch to the face, but the human did not expect to receive a counterattack. She uses her other leg to kick the man. The attack was so strong that it sends the big guy crashing to the ground. His other two companions watch in anger. Impressed, Jahan comments that even small, the girl is quite strong. Approaching, the other human curses the poor girl for defending herself. Then he steps on her head, telling her to shut up. While all this is happening, the protagonist stands still. The young girl is suffering a lot at the hands of those humans, and this ends up making Jahan angry. The other guy approaches him, asking if everything is okay. He thinks Jahan is human and warns him to be careful in the area. He even asks what he is doing alone there. On the other side, the fox keeps complaining, but the man does not understand her language, and to punish her, he intends to hit something on her head. However, our hero is already watching to help her. The leader of the group asks not to hit her, as she will end up losing her life. In response, the short guy apologizes for losing control. This relieves Jahan, as he feared the young girl would be eliminated. Making a scary face, the leader says he saw him talking to the girl earlier, and even points a knife at his stomach, piercing it. The young man explains that things would be easier with him. Soon after, the knife falls to the ground, all dirty with red liquid. With his hand on his stomach, Jahan asks what the guy meant. The fox also watches everything and realizes that he is not an enemy. Suddenly, the protagonist begins to feel his body on fire. The young man says that it was on purpose, but he had avoided the vital points. With the young man spitting red liquid, the leader says that Jahan will be dead within 12 hours. Soon after, he shows an antidote that he will get if he translates what the monsters say. Holding the girl, the men want him to talk to her. The goal is to find out where the foxes live. At first, Jahan is confused, as he did not even know there was a land of foxes. Nearby, Drake, who was chasing the ants, notices something strange. Returning to the hunters, the leader explains that there is a village where these hybrids live. Even so, our hero does not understand why they want to go there. At that moment, the girl interrupts and asks Jahan not to do that. Soon after, she opens her mouth showing her fangs. Jahan realizes that she is going to do something. She tries to bite her own tongue to take her life, but the man stops her. Impressed, our hero reflects on how important her family must be. With her mouth being held, the young girl is called a wild beast. Once again, the leader says that if they find their tribe, the two would come out alive. This reminds him of the same look his schoolmate used to blackmail him. He always lived in fear, being ordered around. The others only saw him as a source of money, but now they would not let things go down the same path. With difficulty, he walks over to the fox. He asks her to take them to the village, and he finishes by saying that no one will get hurt. Seeing the scene, the men truly believe that he can talk to monsters. With her head down, the girl tells Jahan that more than 100 of her kind live there, and she asks if she can really trust his words. He stares at her for a few seconds, and then reveals that he is not on the side of humans. With his hand on his wound, he tells her that he knows they are evil, and when he looks ahead, he is startled by something. His dragon was approaching the enemy from behind, and was preparing to start charging its destructive power. Afraid of it going wrong, Jahan tries not to show what is happening. He wants to buy time until Drake fully charges its power. Then he tries to disguise it, but the leader notices that his behavior has changed. The short member, who was on the other side, notices the creature, and ends up warning his boss, who turns immediately. But Jahan thinks he has given enough time for his dragon to attack. The leader sees the red flame before his eyes. However, to the protagonist's dismay, he can only produce a little. Not believing that this happened again, our hero is left speechless. Not only him, but also the other hunters. Even the poor dragon is startled by such little fire. With that, Jahan recognizes that the recovery time was still not enough. The big guy says that the power was weak, but if it had hit his head, it would have burned. Without wasting time, the leader grabs the bat. Calling Drake a fly, he prepares to hit it. Jahan is left without reaction as he watches his little friend get beaten. The poor thing is sent flying by that attack. He even becomes dizzy, thrown on the ground. Irritated, the man asks how that creature dares to hurt him, and then he approaches the dragon with the bat again. Jahan watches everything without being able to do anything. The leader tells his henchmen to take care of Jahan and the fox while he deals with the dragon. The poor thing was still on the ground unconscious. Grinding his teeth, the protagonist sees that he only has value because he can talk to monsters. Everything was repeating itself as in his world. He was trying to live in a pathetic way to please others. And even so, he was always alone and rejected. No matter what happened, he did not want to return to his reality. Therefore, he swears that he will not regret anything anymore. At that moment, the man is already about to strike the small creature. Even the fox is shocked by what is about to happen. Jahan's expression changes, and he activates his passive physical monster ability. In a matter of seconds, he manages to reach the leader ready to throw a punch. The attack was so powerful that the man flies far away, destroying the ground. The girl is impressed by the strength of the attack, and the other henchmen can hardly believe what they saw. Their leader was lying on the ground with his face all smashed. This time, Jahan took action and acted in time. However, the antidote that would save his life was also shattered. The fox girl wonders how he was moving even while poisoned, and observes what he is about to do. Without wasting time, Jihan goes to pick up his little friend from the ground. Drake opens his eyes, and our hero is proud that he tried to save him. Happy, the dragon smiles, and Jihan comments that when he looks at him, he always remembers someone special. His little cat Ruru was always by his side trying to cheer him up. That's why he swears to his new friend that he will always protect him. The protagonist smiles and concludes that no matter what happens, he will always be by his side. Meanwhile, the men continue cursing and saying they will tell the boss. However, our protagonist is not joking around and looks at them with great anger. Realizing that they might end up getting beaten, the henchmen run away. Drake celebrates that they have won, but soon after, Jahan loses strength and falls to the ground. He falls hard while the fox watches. The young girl is a bit startled, thinking he might have lost his life. The little dragon is also very worried, shaking his master. Our hero is still awake, but believes this will be his end. The last image he has is of his little friend looking concerned. When he completely loses consciousness, he remembers the scene of his mother in the hospital. He was all alone the whole time, and he is very angry because his father never showed up to help. Gradually, his consciousness returns and he opens his eyes. Jihan is being carried by the fox girl. At that moment, they are passing through a very dark cave. It doesn't take long for her to reach her village. The other rabbit residents are surprised as he looked like a human. The girls approach and comment that despite his appearance, he smells like a monster. They stay by the window watching, wondering when he will wake up. In fact, the protagonist has already woken up, but he doesn't want all this attention on him. Approaching them, the fox asks them to give Jihan some space. From where he was, our hero recognizes that voice. As soon as she enters, the girl asks if he is awake, and she tries to explain that he is attracting attention because it is the first time a human has appeared. They are also curious because he doesn't smell human. Looking at his hands, Jihan realizes that the poison mark has disappeared. The fox explains that they had kept him in the village. It is at this moment that he realizes that the girl brought him to her home. Even risking herself with the one who captured her, she helped him. Curious, he asks why she saved him. In response, the young girl says that despite his appearance, he didn't seem like one of them. He insists on another reason, and the fox remembers a scene. The girl comments that the concern he showed for his dragon moved her. Reflecting, our hero questions if this happened because of the effect of being a friendly monster. However, the girl gets annoyed and says that he keeps grumbling even after being saved. The little dragon was taking a nap, but as soon as he opens his eyes, he realizes that his owner has woken up. However, he notices that he and the fox are in the middle of a discussion. The young girl says that now they are even because Jihan also saved her. At that moment, he hears a familiar sound. Drake was jumping towards him, very happily. The little creature hugs him while the fox girl watches. Interrupting the moment, she says they should know each other's names, but just as she was about to say, one of the residents appears and warns that the chief is looking for them. Thus, they head to the location, while Jihan is enchanted by the village. The place beyond the mountains was made by rabbit monsters, but now it houses any hybrid species that has lost its home. They work in harmony and care for one another. Suddenly, a bull-type creature appears questioning if the fox named Ria went to the human forest. She apologizes and continues walking, but the bull remains suspicious. Calling her by name, our hero comments that everyone there seems to care about her, but the girl looks downcast and Jihan asks if something happened. Out of nowhere, Ria changes her mood and starts calling him Hey. Irritated, she asks if his name is Hey, and she stands in front of him, waiting for an answer. Noticing her confusion, Jihan reveals his name. He feels a bit awkward, as it is not a very common name around there. Unexpectedly, the fox says her full name, Rhea Lindrian Pernides Ciliard. Soon after, she walks away, leaving Jihan confused. One of the little rabbits asks if Rhea is feeling better, and she replies that she is. Our hero notices that her mood has improved. Apparently, she just wanted to say her name. Looking around, he remembers his main mission, to recruit monsters for the faction. And with his thoughts far away, the fox calls him to continue walking. He feels a bit upset because even now knowing her name, she still called him Hey, but still, he runs to catch up with her. Reaching the leader, he directly states that Jihan will take over the village now. Both he and the fox are shocked. Jihan says he doesn't understand anything about the village, and the rabbit leaves, saying he is already old. Raya questions if he is really going to do this just because of a dream, but the old man is determined and says he won't change his mind. Our hero doesn't understand anything about what just happened. The old man only said he had a dream and that they always came true. Looking at Jihan, he says he knows that the person who will save the village is him. This makes him remember his main mission, the construction of the monster faction, and he becomes worried if something will happen there, since he will now be seen as a savior. He remembers that cursed man who wanted to use him as a translator in exchange for his life, and immediately something crosses his mind. He calls Rhea to tell her. Thus he asks if no one followed them on the way to the village. The girl replies that the place is very well hidden and that no one has ever discovered it. This is because behind that mountain there is a vast sea, and no one dares to go there. Moreover, the only way to enter without crossing the mountain is through a tunnel beneath the sea. The rabbits also made a kind of maze to make it difficult for intruders to enter. Therefore, the entrance to that place is almost impossible. Rhea also says that she didn't feel anyone's presence. Despite this, the protagonist had a strange feeling. There was red liquid on the path, probably from Rhea, and hidden in one of the caves was one of the henchmen. He was watching the village and celebrating he had finally found it. Suddenly, they hear a commotion in the village saying that there was an intruder. Jihan and Rhea are surprised to hear that they found a human there. The bull becomes very nervous, cursing, and the short one complains that he doesn't understand anything. Approaching, our hero asks if they followed them. Completely shaken, Rhea questions if he had been following her all along because she had made sure there was no one. She starts to apologize, saying it was her fault, but the bull says it isn't. He also says that she shouldn't blame herself, as she was too weak to notice. All her friends also comfort her, saying it wasn't her fault. At that moment, the protagonist remembers that there were 3 men, and so that short henchman says that soon the whole place will be in flames. With a wicked smile, he reveals that he is part of a gang called Screaming All, and he discloses that, at any minute, about 200 men will be there. Confused, Jahan wonders what this Screaming All is. Meanwhile, the other 2 henchmen walk with difficulty. The leader of the 3 goes to his boss. Crying, he tells that he was beaten and that he wanted revenge for it. The man just stays quiet, listening to everything they have to say. Shouting, his servant announces that he found the fox village and that he would show where it is. With a smile, the leader of Screaming All thanks for the information. He says they will go to the place right now. His servant is also excited about the news. Meanwhile, the short one, who is already in the village, says that he wasn't the only one to get there. Both he and the other 2 henchmen were walking through the forest, but the leader of the 3 said it wasn't time to go home yet. That was the perfect moment to follow the girl. Laughing, the henchman claims that soon everyone will lose their lives. Without reacting, the young fox questions what he is talking about, as she doesn't understand him. She realizes that Jahan is serious and calls him by name. In response, her hero explains that they discovered the hideout and more men would soon arrive. The poor girl is shocked. Focusing, the protagonist begins to remember the name of that boss. In the game Night Defense, the character gained experience by attacking waves of monsters. But leveling up was not always enough to survive those waves. That's why the game had another system called Adventurers. Players would run with the knight to send him on missions and clear stages. Everything started in the area of the remains of wild goblins, and it extended to the demon fortress, totaling 100 stages. Although he doesn't remember all of them, Jahan recalls the final part. In it was the hideout of Screaming All, behind a rocky hill. These stages had a backstory, and this one was precisely about a gang. However, he feels anxious because he doesn't remember any stage in the place where he is. According to the game, that place would be destroyed. The short one then says he wants to make a proposal. He claims that whoever frees him will have their life spared by his boss. Although the protagonist knows that only he understands what the man is saying, the other hybrids already felt in their hearts what that meant. Rhea continues to dwell on her guilt, saying it was all her fault. Meanwhile, the man insists on shouting to be released. With a determined look, Jahan says he won't let the village be destroyed. While the annoying short one keeps talking, the protagonist approaches. Looking at him, the little man asks Jahan to interpret for the others what he was saying. Jahan is not in the mood for jokes and clenches his fist. He punches that annoying guy in the face. The short one is thrown away, screaming. The bull man is impressed to see that strength. Even the little rabbits are left open-mouthed. Rhea also doesn't believe what her friend just did. The little guy is practically unconscious on the ground, and our hero is willing to fight if necessary. The young fox is impressed to hear that he will do everything to protect them. However, the bull explains that it would be impossible to fight. Everyone there was very weak, and most were women and children. At that moment, the former chief approaches. With everyone gathered, he says he will announce something to everyone at once. He proclaims Jahan as the new chief of the village. Meanwhile, the gang of mercenaries walks. They finally get close to the place, and the chief gets excited. He can hardly believe that the village was hidden right there, behind the rocky hill. However, he says that it will now become the new base for his gang. Thus, he and his warriors walk toward the location. Meanwhile, in the village, the bull man explains that the enemies are about 200 men. Unlike them, who only had bull men, 2 young deer, 5 sheep, and a girl fox. If they also counted the rabbits, the total would be 112. He asks Jahan if they will have any chance, but the young man replies that the enemies have double the strength. Our hero thinks better and remembers that not everything comes down to numbers. This makes him recall his friend Rhea, who attacked those men alone. Then he assumes that the young girl can handle 3 men by herself. Although he heard that the villagers never fought, they might have good skills. When they transform into animal form, they usually become stronger. So he concludes that if everyone has at least the level of the fox, they will be fine. Therefore, he calls for the bull and asks what Rhea's position would be in terms of strength. The hybrid thinks while the protagonist waits for a good answer. Looking at her, who is playing with the dragon, he says he can affirm that she is the strongest in the village. This leaves Jahan speechless. The bull also says that if everyone there united against her, she would still come out victorious. Knowing this information, our hero would have to take action. He lowers his head, thinking about the possible consequences. It's as if the rest of the people were completely useless. While they talk, the young fox says they still have time before the humans arrive. Not understanding, our hero asks how she knows this. She points to the little guy and says she asked him. Jihan comments that he heard from one of the henchmen that their chief was looking for something he lost. He asks Rhea if she has any idea what it could be, but she doesn't know. The young girl says that it is just a small village where homeless creatures have gathered. Then the protagonist assumes that maybe they are just using this as an excuse. At that moment, the bull named Tor warns that everyone is already gathered. This would be the time for Jae-han to share the plan with them. He knows that to overcome the disadvantages, individual statistics need to be high. And now he already knows that the strongest there is the girl fox, so he counts on her to defeat 3 at once, but he is not sure if she can. He wonders if it depends on the species to have strength, and thinks it would be good if he could see the statistic. At that moment, he remembers something. Maybe that ability, the demon eye, could analyze. He recalls that, usually in the game, he used this by activating the status, so he tries to do the same to activate his. However, he ends up getting frustrated because nothing appears there. He feels embarrassed that nothing showed up, but soon something red starts to emerge. That was the inventory, but it was completely empty. He also pays attention to the name of it, as it is different from when he played on the kingdom side. This even makes him remember something that happened in the kingdom. He had won that super powerful sword, so powerful that it destroyed the entire palace. But he gets irritated because he ended up leaving it behind. Since this other window opened, he wonders why the status one doesn't open. He reflects on his 4 passive abilities, the first being the demon eye. The second is the ability to communicate with both humans and monsters. The third is a pleasant monster, attracting others easily. And lastly, the fourth is a physical monster that transcends human strength. Already losing patience, he says he needs to make a decision soon. She calms down and asks for guidance, saying this only happened because of her fault. Sad, she says she wants to protect the village. Jae-han knows that she blames herself and that they also don't have time to waste with each passing minute. Suddenly, his eye starts to shine with a strong color. He manages to analyze the fox's face. When the eye focuses, he realizes he has the option to designate a target. With that, he begins to understand how this ability works. He just needed to activate the ability to be able to use it. To do this, when he looked at someone, he needed to specify what exactly he wanted to check. Thus, he can see that he is classified as rank B. Excited, Jae-han remembers that this ranking is the same as that of an average knight. Upon closer analysis, he realizes that the girl stands out in attack power. Meanwhile, Rhea continues talking, but the protagonist is not listening. He is just focused on the skill window and wonders what that heart was. With his finger, he goes over to click on it. However, when he realizes it, he was poking the girl's nose. He plays it off, saying it was unintentional. However, the young girl gets very angry and jumps on him. Then Jae-han asks Tor to gather everyone from the village there. Despite the scratch he got on his face, he says he is fine. All the villagers gather just as requested, and the protagonist did this so he could analyze each one. This is quite tiring, and he feels relieved when he finishes. After analyzing each one, he was able to determine if they were strong. He knows that, even as a baby, Rizaldrake is still the strongest. Even though he is small, he concentrates all his power in a single attack, and this causes him to consume all his mana at once. Taking this into account, Jae-han knows he won't be able to use him in this battle. This time, he can only rely on Rhea, rank B, and Tor, rank C. As for the rest of the villagers, they were part of the ranking, being the weakest of all. Even without knowing the level of the enemies, he knows that the phase was around rank C. Worried, he stands up, as he now understands that they wouldn't be able to fight on equal terms. In addition to being outnumbered, they also lack items and skills. Thus, he knows that under these conditions, it will be impossible to protect the village. However, he knows that this is no longer a game but reality. He knows he could use other things that wouldn't qualify in a game, and looking around him, he thinks of creating some variables. Therefore, he calls the fox and the bull to discuss the strategy. Meanwhile, the gang continues on their way to the mountain. In front of them is the leader, and right next to him, 2 rabbits are scouting to see when they will arrive. The boy tells the girl that they should go back to warn them. However, when they least expect it, the young man is hit right on the head. The girl is shocked, as the rabbit was her brother. The one who hit the poor thing was the gang leader, and with malice he leaves the girl watching her brother's body. She closes her eyes, trying to react to the situation. Thus, she transforms into a rabbit and runs away. The leader says they don't need to chase after her. Then his henchman asks if it would be the same to let the rabbit escape. With a wicked expression, the man repeats that he is infecting them. Meanwhile, the village is in full swing, putting the plan into action. The little rabbit that managed to escape was already arriving to warn them. Our hero notices that she is coming alone. Desperate, the young girl screams that the humans are already there. Even the bull man is startled. Not understanding, Rhea asks why she is covered in red liquid. The girl is in complete despair, screaming about the humans. She says they are already here. Even so, our hero is confident. Although he is the first line of defense for the monster faction, he is ready to win. As a determined man, he says he will not let the village be violated. After walking for some time, the gang arrives at the entrance of the cave. The leader asks if this is really the fox's den, and his henchman says yes. They enter the place and intend to finish everything before sunset. With her excellent sense of smell, the fox senses that they are already close. Turning to her friend Jae-han, she questions whether the plan will work. Returning to the gang, they continue walking. Following the path they had noted, the man believes they will reach the village in 30 minutes. The chief comments that everything is very calm, but he believes they are hiding. That hairy guy even mentions that he will take revenge on the game. After taking another step, the young man notices the sound coming from the ground. Everything starts to crack beneath them, and with no time to escape, the ground collapses. Some of them manage to escape, staying out of that area. By a hair, the leader manages to hold his subordinate from falling. Meanwhile, those who fell complained of pain in their legs and arms. The hairy guy comments to his boss that they set traps along the way, and with a serious look, the the man looks ahead. He concludes that they made traps by digging holes and then covering them with wooden planks. Thus, when a heavier weight is applied on top, everything collapses. The other big guy comments that there was none of this the day before. That's why this time they needed to be much more careful. The boss doesn't seem to care and takes the lead, and while cursing his henchmen, they become confused, not understanding why. Without much effort, he holds a large rock, and then he throws it right in front of him. As they expected, it was another trap. Then he explains that this cave is artificial, and that it was originally rock. Thus, it's easy to know that the traps are where there is dirt and gravel. After he says this, his men also begin to notice the difference. Indeed, there were some places with many small stones. The leader feels smug, saying that humans like them wouldn't fall for this. After that, he asks some to stay behind to help those who fell. Inside the village, Ria can hear that they found the traps. Jihan celebrates, as it was part of his plan for them to find them. To dig through so much rock would take a long time, and he also imagined that it wouldn't work more than once. Thus, he confesses that the real traps are only 2, which means these men are diverting for nothing, as the others are false. Our hero did this because he knows they would be able to buy time. Meanwhile, the men continue walking through the cave. Some are already afraid of falling into something else, and getting closer, the subordinate says there will be a crossroads ahead. Looking at what is right there, the leader doesn't believe it. That's because there are not just 2 entrances, but 3. The long-haired man complains, saying that he didn't have that before and remembers that bush. Recognizing it as a way to deceive them, the leader says he won't fall for it. He knows this was done to buy time. They are probably preparing something in the village, and he wouldn't let that happen. So he tells his group that they will split into smaller groups. He assigns the long-haired man to the left tunnel. The big guy will lead the middle path. And finally, the leader himself will take the right path. The first group on the left soon finds themselves at a dead end, as the path was blocked. Meanwhile, the middle group sees a light and believes it to be the exit. Thus, the big guy spots the rest to prepare for battle. The left group also sees a light. The leader even believes he took the correct path. Therefore, he orders that no hybrid be left alive. Without wasting time, both groups advance to attack. However, the side where the boss leads has something different. They emerge in the middle of the forest. Thus, he concludes that he took another wrong path. The man who actually reached the village orders his companions to hold their position. He asks one of the men to go back to the crossroads to inform the boss. At that moment, they realize that the other member was tied to a tree. The short man can't even say anything, as his mouth is gagged. So quickly, the group goes to him. Sweating profusely, the man asks for his boss, and looking at the group, he realizes they are outnumbered. In the cave, the young gang member runs to inform the leader. However, on the way, something unexpected happens. There is a huge explosion of smoke. The boy is hit and thrown against the wall. This was done by the fox girl herself, along with our hero. Everything was going well. The traps were buying them time. Moreover, they also managed to divide the enemy's force. After learning what happened to the group, the short man becomes nervous. Suddenly, the big guy turns to see what was happening. All the villagers were already lurking to attack. Jihan, along with his friend, also appears. Thus, the protagonist contacts the villagers. He gives them the go-ahead to advance. From atop the cliff, he watches happily as things are going well. The enemy also gives his group the order to attack. The fight is about to begin. Both sides stand face to face. The leader of this group prepares to use his hammer. Then our hero warns everyone to begin their beastly transformation. With that, everyone seems to vanish, creating smoke. The man wonders if they disappeared. Everything was part of the tactic, as when the ferocious ones transform, they produce smoke. When he arrived at the village and saw this happen, he immediately thought to use it in battle. By doing this, the enemies wouldn't know from where they attacked. In the next part of the fight, Jehan would use the bull. Thus, in the midst of the smoke, he appears holding a huge stone. The others who are a bit farther away are left confused about what is happening. Then, the little rabbits prepare to attack those who are alone. Others stay underground to hold their feet. Thus, with the enemy distracted, another attacks his head. Each one attacks from a side, delivering a kick. The boy even gets scared and runs away. Meanwhile, in another part, 3 members manage to mobilize one of the residents. They are confused as it seems their strikes are not hitting the sheep. Elsewhere, others are hit with the hot liquid on their heads. The one doing this was the small Rizeldrake, using his limited power. So far, Jihan and Ria have not needed to intervene as everything was going well, but he remained attentive to everything happening. Nearby, the short one along with 2 other members hold weapons. They want to try to hit the rabbits that are digging into the ground. Noticing the danger, the protagonist asks the fox for help. With her great speed, the young girl quickly rushes out. Even our hero, who knows her, is impressed. The girl reached them in a matter of seconds, but the short one who was behind intends to hit her with a crossbow. He uses the weapon, and the arrow heads towards Ria. The young girl sees it right before her eyes, but what they did not expect is that she would manage to dodge. She does this using some of her moves and prepares to attack. Without wasting time, the girl delivers a powerful kick to one of the men's faces. He has a smirk, showing that he managed to block. But with her high speed, Ria soon. From the ground, she delivers another kick, this time hitting him squarely. From there, she moves on to the other enemy. Against his face, the young girl manages to knock him down. The remaining short one grumbles, asking what she is doing. This time, the 2 stand face to face. Almost immediately, she uses her leg for another strike. This time, she hits the short one's head against the ground. He ends up with a bruised face, complaining. In a very short time, the fox takes out all 3. Finally, looking at them, the young girl tells them not to underestimate her. Looking around, the big guy realizes that his men are losing. He becomes angry, and his veins even bulge. With a very angry look, he activates his ability. His arms begin to double in size. Accompanying this, Jihan already knew what it was about. C-rank knights or higher can use abilities, so this man can use the ability to increase his strength. The little rabbits below him are terrified, but the big guy did not expect that someone else would arrive. A very large hand holds a tree trunk. It was the bull, who was twice his size. Looking at that, the enemy is left speechless. And from a distance, our hero watches his plan unfold. He is even impressed, as he did not expect his friend to be so strong. Meanwhile, in the middle of the cave, the long-haired one asks how long he will have to wait. His group had already returned from the crossroads, but no one was arriving. Already impatient, he says he will make his own decision. He points to the direction his big friend went and says they will follow that way. Meanwhile, in the village, all the enemies have been captured and buried. Thus, the protagonist talks to Taurus to check on his leg. He is a bit worried. Despite being in much greater numbers than the enemies, many were injured. However, he will not give up now. The others were already getting close to the exit. Jihan realizes that more enemies will come out from there, so he warns his friend Bull to do something. He asks the hybrid to distribute all those weapons to the villagers. Thus, everyone chooses a weapon for themselves. Bull takes the hammer from the big guy he defeated. Then, the protagonist uses his eye to see the levels. With those weapons, he notices that everyone's power has almost doubled. This excites him, as it exceeded his expectations. Finally, another part of the enemy group arrives there. The one leading wonders why there is so much silence, and right there in front, part of his group is buried in the ground. When he realizes what has happened, they are shocked. The long-haired one even starts shouting, thinking they have lost their lives. However, when he gets closer, he can see that they are still alive. They say they will get the others out of there, but wonder why there are so many holes in the ground. While talking with his companion, they appear behind him. The last group, with the chief, is still trying to find the right path. He complains that it is quite difficult to find the correct location without a map. One of them comments that he believes they are in the right place this time, but he ends up stepping on one of those gravel spots. Everyone starts screaming, thinking they are going to fall. One of them even slips, but they become confused when they realize that, even standing there, nothing fell. The member asks what happened. Taking a spear, the chief uses it to touch the ground. Thus, he realizes that everything else they thought were traps was false. He becomes very irritated, thinking how dare they play with him. Thinking about his ability, he said he would tear them apart. At that moment, the member who returned to warn them arrives. He reports that they had found the right path, and it was the middle tunnel. The leader is happy, as he will now be able to finish everyone off. Back at the village, everything was already resolved. The others from the second group were also buried. By creating just one wall at the crossroads, they managed to buy time. They made 3 paths, but only one led to the village. Jihan reflects that now all that remains is to endure the last group. The hairy one manages to remove the gag from his mouth. Looking at the protagonist, he said they couldn't handle their leader. Smiling, he said the man is on a completely superior level. Without giving that idiot a chance to continue talking, Rhea kicks him in the head. She goes to our hero to give the new numbers of those who can still fight. He knows that, including the leader, about 60 enemies remain. The villagers were already at a disadvantage for having fought twice. Then once again, Jihan uses his eye to look at the levels. With those that remain, he notices they gained combat experience. Thus, he smiles and announces that they have become stronger. Meanwhile, footsteps are heard approaching. The fox warns that they are coming. At the cave entrance, the leader, along with his group, shows up. Right there in front is the rest of his group buried. With a look of disdain, he calls them pathetic. From a distance, he asks if all of that was Jihan's plan. Responding to his question, our hero said it was a strategy. The man laughs, saying they were quite confident. He also says that despite having 2 victories, there won't be a third. Holding his sword, the protagonist says they will see about that soon. The leader doesn't seem very pleased when Jihan says he has a proposal. Our hero points his sword at the hairy one's neck, threatening to eliminate him. He said that if they don't drop their weapons, he would eliminate him. For a few seconds, the leader is left speechless. Meanwhile, his subordinate is screaming in despair. Our hero doesn't know if they accepted this, but it doesn't hurt to try. Soon after, they start dropping their weapons. This surprises Jihan, as he didn't expect it to work. Even so, those criminals have smiles on their faces. The protagonist realizes that something is wrong. They did this because the leader is starting to activate his ability. When he sees this happening, our hero is left open-mouthed. This ability increases the attack of all allies within the area by 25%. Then Jihan panics, as the enemy's power has skyrocketed. At that moment, the leader orders his gang members to eliminate everyone. Thus the fight begins, and both sides will face off. Just like at the beginning, a great smoke forms between them. They use this so that other rabbits appear and attack. It seems to be working, as they manage to hit the enemy's heads, but they can't hit the man. The 2 little rabbits are left not knowing what to do now. This time, the village was losing badly to the gang. Tor was also doing his best, using that hammer and sending men flying. However, he didn't expect the enemies to use ropes to tie him up. Both his arms and neck are restrained. The enemies start pulling and use all their strength to hold him. By doing this, they manage to bring him down to the ground and say it's their chance to attack him. Faced with this situation, the bull thinks it's his end. On the other side, the sheep used as bait were also fleeing. Rizeldrake was giving his all, but he had to keep dodging arrows. Our hero is aware that this time, things were not going well. He wonders where his fox friend is. The girl is giving her all, fighting against the enemies. For now, she is still winning. But this time, she was surrounded by several men. The poor girl was already very tired and wouldn't be able to take them all down. The protagonist is worried, as he knows she is at her limit. Suddenly, one of the rabbits passes right by his face. The poor thing was thrown, hitting the tree. The animal transforms into that little girl, and she is unconscious. Noticing his current situation, Jihan only thinks of one more way to end the battle. He would have to eliminate the main person first. That person is the leader, as he is the one giving power to the others. Right next to him, Jahan sees his friend suffering at the hands of those thugs. Tor turns and looks at him, showing his determined look. His friend already imagines what he will do. While they talked about tactics, the protagonist knew that Tor could transform once more, so the hybrid is watching to wait for the signal for his transformation. The enemies are in a hurry to eliminate him as quickly as possible, so they hold their blades to finish him off once and for all. However, just as they were about to strike him, Jahan asks him to awaken. Transforming into that great monster, he throws those humans aside. Thus, our hero runs away and asks his friend to follow him. The two are heading towards the boss to defeat him. Despite this, the leader is quite calm, waiting for them. Raising his arms, he prepares to use his strength. His gaze is very focused, and with just one blow, he sends one of the enemies flying. Now it would be the leader's turn, who was right in front. He prepares his super punch to attack the gang leader, and so it is done. The force is so great that it even raises dust. But after doing this, something frightens him. The man had caught his fist with just one of his hands. From above, the protagonist takes the opportunity to stab with his sword. However, the bastard is not afraid. With a few movements, he throws the bowl towards our hero. Jihan did not expect this and ends up getting hit. Thus, the two end up falling to the ground. Approaching Tor, the leader brings his foot to the hybrid's face. He practically jumps on the poor guy, using all his strength. Jihan, who fell a little to the side, is very irritated. After hitting the bull, the leader looks at our protagonist, and without wasting any time, he charges to attack him. He was nearby, taking out other members. With the first attack, our hero finds himself at a disadvantage and is thrown onto the rocks. The young woman realizes that her friend is losing. Her face is already injured. The only chance to end this bastard was him, as he was stronger. Once again, the gang leader tries to attack. Holding onto the rock, he thinks about what to do next. Then he decides it's time to use that ability. He activates the physical monster ability, and with his power transcending energy, he runs towards the enemy. This time, the bastard did not expect such a strong attack. The punch lands right in the leader's face, causing him to fall back. The young fox is impressed by the power. Even her friend Tor did not expect him to achieve this. That punch was very strong, and the man is thrown away. With this, Jehan believes he has managed to hurt that jerk. However, this leader is still standing. He faces Jehan and says that he had warned him. With a very evil look, he says that the village would not achieve 3 victories. Jehan falls into despair, thinking about how he will defeat this being. Soon after, he receives a punch right in the stomach. This causes him to go down on his knees. He even has to use his hand for support. Given how things were going, he seems to have no more chances. At that moment, his enemy grabs his head, and then pushes it towards the ground, making it hit hard. Despite losing, Jehan does not think about giving up. The leader orders him to be quiet, and our hero asks him to leave the village in peace. It was hard to see all those people watching his defeat. They were very worried about the protagonist's well-being. Even though they could do nothing, they felt very sorry for what was happening. Suddenly, Tor notices that Rhea was running over to help G Honorable. However, someone had a crossbow aimed at her. As they aimed the weapon, they hit the girl's leg. The girl feels pain and can no longer run. Seeing this, the protagonist knows that his friend is in danger. She ends up falling to the ground, unable to walk anymore. Looking at the sky, the gang leader says that the sun is already setting and that it is now too late. Looking at everyone, he asks them to listen. He announces that the war is over, and with a smile, he orders his henchmen to burn the city. Our hero would be there, being held, watching everything. Those bastards lit torches with fire and threw them everywhere. Even the tents and their food would catch fire. This time, our hero knows that the city would be destroyed. The home of these people was already in ruins. The inhabitants are desperate about this situation. Those who are in their homes start running to avoid getting hurt. Meanwhile, the members of that group are celebrating. The rabbits just watch, believing it to be the end of everything. Jehan feels very bad seeing that people are already losing hope, but he knows that if it continues like this, he will be like a loser who loses everything. In addition to the destruction, they were hurting the residents, tying their arms. Others go after the bull to eliminate it. Some had already been hit and were unconscious. Finally, the entire village was filled with fire. At that moment, the chief grabs our hero by his clothes. He lifts him up, using his arm to humiliate him. Your fox friend, who was nearby, calls your name, but Jehan still has the strength to move his hands. He grabs the arm of that bastard, and then he tells his enemy that he will not lose. Again, he remembers the scene when his mother took the kitten. He wants to return to that moment, and for that, he needs to fulfill his objective there. So even though he is injured and out of hope, he does not intend to give up. The residents who were still nearby notice Jehan's strength. Tor keeps looking at him, and his friend Ria is also impressed. That leader just laughs in his face. He is already holding a spear in his hands to finish him off. Soon after, he brings it to his neck to show that it will be the end. But something was changing in the young fox's body. Jaehan's life was about to be lost, and when he least expects it, Ria manages to help him. She strikes the arm of that Dan gang leader. The man is left confused about how this happened. She used her enormous claws to wound the bastard. With that, Jaehan ends up being freed. While he is astonished by the action, he found it strange from the beginning, as the other hybrids transformed only by using mana. However, this did not happen with Ria. She always maintained the same appearance. This was even true when she faced situations that put her life at risk, but it seems that now she was truly using her full strength. She had awakened her power under the light of the moon, increasing her power by 100%. Maintaining her stance, she asks Jaehan to give the next order. Still in disbelief, our hero calls her name. Meanwhile, the leader is screaming in pain from his arm. Finally, Jaehan gives the order to eliminate every remaining thug there.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.